Good evening, Mr. President. I'd like to start straightforward. For most French, you are, in a very large part, responsible for the chaos going on in Syria because of the brutality of the repression during that last 4 years. According to you, what is your part of responsibility?
Since the first few weeks of the conflict, the terrorists infiltrated the situation in Syria with the support of Western countries and regional countries. And they started attacking the civilians and destroying public places, public properties and private properties, and that's documented on the internet by them, not by us. So our role as government is to defend our society and our citizens. If you want to say what you said is correct, after 4 years, how could a government or president that's been brutal with his population, killing them, and with the support from the other side of the greatest country, political powers in the world, with the petrodollars in our region, how could he withstand for 4 years? Is it possible to have the support of your public while you are brutal with your public?
In the beginning, there were tens of thousands of people in the street. Were they all jihadists?
No, definitely not. But the other question, if in the sixth days of the conflict, the first Syrian policeman was killed, how? By the peaceful demonstration? By the audio wave of the demonstrators? How? He's been killed by terrorists, somebody who take a gun and shoot that policeman, so he's terrorist. It doesn't matter if he's jihadist or not. He's a terrorist because he killed a policeman.
There were perhaps jihadists or terrorists, but our reporters were there at the beginning and they met a lot of people saying we want more freedom, more democracy. There weren't terrorists or jihadists.
Definitely, everybody should ask for his freedom, and every government should support the freedom, of course, under the constitution. But does that freedom mean to kill the civilians, to kill the policemen, to destroy the schools, the hospitals, the electricity, the infrastructure that's not owned by the government? It's not owned by the Syrian people. It's not owned by us. It's not owned by me. Is that the freedom that you're talking about?
A lot of analysts and a lot of journalists say that you have helped ISIS to emerge because it's an opportunity for you to appear like a shield, a rempart, un bouclier.
But ISIS was created in Iraq in 2006 under the supervision of the Americans. I'm not in Iraq, and I wasn't in Iraq. I wasn't controlling Iraq. The Americans controlled Iraq. And ISIS came from Iraq to Syria because chaos is contagious. When you have chaos at your neighborhood, you have to expect it in your area.
But there were ISIS at the beginning.
No, let me continue. Whenever you have chaos in certain country, this is a fertile soil for the terrorists to come. So when there's chaos in Syria, ISIS came to Syria. Before the ISIS became Al-Nusra Front, which is Al-Qaeda. And before that, you had Muslim Brotherhood. They all represent the same grassroots and for ISIS to come later.
So you have no responsibility at all for what happened in the last years in Syria?
Things are not absolute. To have no responsibility is not precise because everybody has a responsibility. We have our own problems in Syria. The government is responsible, every one of us is responsible, every Syrian citizen is responsible. But now I'm talking about what brought ISIS to here, the chaos, and your government, the government, or let's say, if you want to call it regime, the French regime as they call us, is responsible of supporting those jihadis that he called them, or they called them, moderate opposition.
France is supporting coalition, national Syrian coalition. Are they terrorists?
The people who are supported now, who have Western armaments, they became ISIS. They were supported by your state and by other Western states by armament, and that was announced by your defense minister. Yeah, he announced it at the beginning of this year. He said, we sent armament. So those people that you call them moderate, in 2012, before the rise of ISIS and before the West acknowledged the existence of Al-Qaeda faction, which is Al-Nusra, they publish videos where they eat the heart of Syrian soldiers, where they dismember other victims and where they behead others. They published it, we didn't. So how can you ignore this reality that they want to publish it and tell you this is the fact?
Let's talk about the present. It appears that the Syrian army continues to utilize indiscriminated weapons like barrel bombs, which have devastating effects on civilians. Why don't you change this strategy?
We never heard in our army of indiscriminate killing weapon, because no army, including our army, will accept to use weaponry that doesn't aim, because it will be of no use. You can't use it, I mean, from military point of view. This is a second, when you want to talk about indiscriminate killing, it's not about the weapon, it's about the way you use it. And the proof to that is the American drones in Pakistan and Afghanistan. They killed more civilians than terrorists. They are the highest precision weapon in the world. So it's not about the kind of bomb. We have regular bombs, regular armaments like any other.
You don't use barrel bombs?
Well, what is it, barrel bombs? What is it? Can you tell me what is it?
There are several documents, videos, and photographies like this, where you see a barrel bomb dropped by helicopters. This is Alep, this is Hama a few months ago, 1 year ago. Only Syrian army has helicopters, so what can you answer?
This is not proof. This is two pictures of two things. No one can link them with each other.
Alep, Hama.
No. This picture that you mentioned here, what is it? I've never seen such a thing in our army.
Photograph. So
no, I'm not talking about the helicopter, because they are talking about two pictures. How can you relate between the two?
You say it's a fake?
Sorry?
You say it's a fake, it's a false document?
No. It has to be verified. But in our army, we only use regular bombs that could be aimed. So we don't have any armament that could be shelled indiscriminately. That's it.
But this helicopter, only Syrian army has helicopter.
Yeah, of course. I didn't say that we don't have a helicopter, that we don't use it. I didn't say no. I'm talking about the armaments. They aim to target the terrorists. Why to kill indiscriminately? Why to kill the civilians? The war in Syria is about winning the heart of the people. It's not about killing people. If you kill people, you cannot be in your position as a government or as president. It's impossible.
What about chemical weapons? You committed 2 years ago not to use chemical weapons. Did you use chlorine gas on the Battle of Idlib last month?
No, this is another fake narrative by the Western government. Why? Because we have two factories of chlorine. One of them is closed for a few years now. It's not used anyway. And the other one is in the northern part in Syria, which is the more important factory than the first one. It's on the Turkish border. It's under the control of the terrorists for 2 years. And we sent formal documents to the United Nations regarding that factory. They wanted to come and they sent us formal response. They couldn't reach it. So the chlorine in Syria is under the control of the rebels. This is a second. This is not a WMD. It's not mass destruction weapons. The regular armament that we have is more influential than the chlorine. So we don't need it anyway.
But there are an investigation. You must have seen that from HWR about last month in Idlib. Three attacks with chlor smell, with symptoms consistent with exposure to toxic gas. That's this in the investigation. These 3 attacks took place in territory controlled by armed opposition groups, HWR. Are there liars?
We didn't use it. We don't need to use it. We have our regular armaments, and we could achieve our goals without it. So we don't use it. No. There's no proof.
There are witnesses. There are testimonies of doctors.
No. So far, we ask in every allegation regarding the chemical weapons in the past, in the present. We were the party who asked the international institutions to send delegation for investigations. We are. Not the opposite, actually. And our soldiers were exposed to sarin gas 2 years ago, and we invited the United Nations to make investigations. How could we invite them while we are using them? That's not true.
Are you ready to invite them again on Idlib? Or?
We already did. We always invite. We don't have problem with that.
Now an international coalition led by US is bombing ISIS from the air. Is it a problem for you or is it a help for you?
It's neither, no one of them, because it's not a problem, of course, if you attack terrorists, but at the same time, if you're not serious, you don't help us.
Why not serious?
If you want to make comparison between the number of air raids of the coalition of 60 countries, while we are one country, small country, what we do is tenfold sometimes than what they do in one day. If that's serious, it took them to liberate what they called it in the media, Kobani city on the Turkish border. It took them 4 months to liberate it, in spite having Syrian fighters on the ground. So they're not serious so far. And the other proof that ISIS has expanded in Syria and Iraq, in Libya, in the region in general. So how can you say that it was effective? They're not serious. That's why they don't make any help to anyone in this region.
There have been 1,000 strike of coalitions since the beginning, but France only is striking in Iraq. Would you like France to join the coalition to strike in Syria?
As I said, they're not serious anyway. Coalition against terrorism cannot formed by countries who support the terrorists at the same time. So we don't care whether they attack it in Syria or Iraq or both, as long as they support the same terrorists at the same time. They send weapons to the same terrorists under the title of moderate opposition when Obama said it's elusive. So the armament actually will go to who? To the terrorists. So this is contradiction. It doesn't work.
You have a same enemy with France, ISIS. There have been attacks in France in January. For that moment, did your intelligence service had contacts with French intelligence services?
There are some contacts, but there's no cooperation.
What do you mean, contacts?
We met with them. We met with some of your security officials, but there's no cooperation.
No exchange of information?
Nothing at all.
So why did you meet them?
They came to Syria. We didn't go to France. They came maybe for some exchange of information, but when you want to have this kind of cooperation, it's two directions way. So it's about we help them, they help us. Now, according to the reality that's related to your politics or to the policy of the French government, we should help them while they support the terrorists and kill our people. So it doesn't work.
Did France ask for contacts with your intelligence service?
Yeah, we met with them. There was a meeting with them.
It was France asking?
Yeah. We don't have any to ask from the French intelligence. We have all the information about the terrorists.
There are hundreds of French fighting with ISIS in Syria. Did you arrest some of them? Are there some French people from ISIS now in Syrian jails?
No, in the prisons we don't have any of them. We only have informations because the majority of those jihadists, they come here to fight and to die and go to heaven. That's their ideology. So they're not ready to go to any prison.
So they are now in jail?
No, in jail we don't have any of them.
There are some people nowadays in France and some politics, some MPs, you have received some of them these last days. They say that it's time to dialogue with you. What initiative would you be ready to take to convince the others that you can become a partner for dialogue?
With them?
With
I
France?
think they have to convince me first that they don't support terrorists, that they are not involved in the bloodshedding of the Syrian people first. They made the mistake regarding Syria. We didn't kill any French or European. We didn't help terrorists in your country. We didn't help the Charlie Hebdo. You helped the terrorists. So your country, Western officials should convince us that they don't support terrorists. But we are ready for any dialogue regarding or taking into consideration that it's going to be for the interest of the Syrian citizen.
So at this moment you're not interested by dialogue with France?
No, we are always interested with dialogue with anyone, but that based on the policy. How can we make dialogue with regime that support terrorists in our country? And what for? That's the question. When they change their policy, we'll be ready to make dialogue. But without that policy, there's no aim for the dialogue. You don't make dialogue for the sake of dialogue. You make it in order to reach certain results. And that result for me is to stop, for this government to stop supporting the terrorists in my country.
So you would have no message to send to François Hollande in the objective of dialogue?
I think the main message that should send to him is by the French people. And the poll in France will tell you what message Hollande should listen to, which is, as the most unpopular president in the history of France since the 50s, should take care of his population and prevent them from terrorists coming to France. So for me, as somebody who's suffering with his citizen, with the other citizen in Syria from terrorists, I think the most important message is what you've been seeing in France is only the tip of the iceberg. When you talk about terrorism, you have full mountain under the sea. Be aware of this mountain that will inflict your society.
When John Kerry in the United States said, perhaps we will have dialogue with Mr. Bashar al-Assad, with President al-Assad, after he came back to another position, but you said, okay, this is words, I want acts, I'm ready to dialogue. So you are ready for dialogue?
Of course, we are ready. We said we are ready with every country in this world, and including the great powers in the world, including France. But I said dialogue should be based on certain policy. The spearhead against Syria, the spearhead that support terrorism in Syria was first France, second UK, not the US at this time. Obama acknowledged that the moderate opposition is elusive.
He didn't really say that.
Did your official acknowledge? No, he said it.
He said it's a phantasm to think that we could arm them and they could win the war. But he didn't say there were no moderate opposition.
Exactly. What's the meaning? If we could arm them and win the war, what does it mean? What mean is fantasy? That's what it means. They said they're going to arm the moderate opposition. Can you tell me what is it? Where is it? We don't see it. We live in Syria. You live in France. I live here. I don't find it to fight it. If we have to fight it, we don't find it.
You say there are foreign countries, too much foreign countries, involved in Syria conflict. But without Iranian support, without Hezbollah support, would you be able to fight against terrorism now?
There's a big difference between intervention and invitation. Every country, every government in the world, every state have the right to invite any other country or party or organization to help in any domain, while no country have the right to intervene without invitation. So we invite Hezbollah. We didn't invite the Iranians. They're not here. They didn't send any troop, the Iranians. No, they didn't.
No one Iranian?
No. We have regular relations for more than 3 decades. We have commanders, officers coming and going between the two countries. This is kind of cooperation that exists for a long time. This is different from fighting. They don't fight, no. So we have the right, but France and other countries don't have the right to support anyone within our country. This is breach of the international law. This is breach of our sovereignty. This is breach of the value that they've been proud talking about, or allegedly some of them talk about, for decades now, or maybe for centuries. One of them is a democracy. Is democracy to send armament to terrorists, to support rebels? Do I have the right to support the terrorists of Charlie Hebdo or similars?
You know what?
No.
French Prime Minister said recently about you. He said he's a butcher. What you respond?
First of all, let me be frank with you. The statements of the officials in France, no one is taking them seriously now, for one reason, because France is satellite somehow to the American policy in the region. It's not independent, it doesn't have the weight, it doesn't have the credibility. This is first. Second, as an official, we always care about the opinion of your population, of your citizen, of the Syrians. I'm not made in France or in any other country. You are here because of your citizen, and that's what you have to take care of.
Do you think one day you will win this war and that everything will go on like before, and Syria will go on like before? with nothing change?
No, nothing should be as before. Because if you bring things as before means you didn't develop, you didn't learn from the conflict. This conflict has many lessons. We have to learn from the lessons and we have to make things not before, better. And there's a big difference.
And with Bashar al-Assad ruling Syria?
I don't care about this. I care about what the Syrian people want. If they want Bashar al-Assad, he will stay. If they don't want him, he has to leave right now. I mean, how can he govern without the support of his public?
But
Can he? He cannot.
How can you know that you have support of your population?
First of all, when you don't have support, they won't support the army. You will not withstand for 4 years. How can you withstand without their support?
Perhaps they are scared.
Sorry?
Perhaps they are scared.
There are 23 millions. How can 23 millions scare from one person or one intelligence or one government? That's not realistic, not rational.
Do you think it's democracy now in Syria? Do you think
No.
people can really say what they think?
No, we were on the way to democracy. It's a process, it's a long way. There's no place you reach it, you say this is democracy. If you want to compare me to the West, to France and other countries, no, you are much ahead of us, definitely, because of your history, because many other circumstances and factors. If you want to compare me to your closest friend, the Saudi Arabia, of course we are democratic. So it depends on how you compare me.
If you had the conviction that leaving the power would mean peace for Syria, would you do it?
Without hesitation. If that's
you
the
would
case,
leave.
Without hesitation. No, without hesitation, I will leave, of course. If I am the reason of conflict in my country, I shouldn't be here. That's self-evident.
I wanted to show you another photography. This is Gilles Jacquier. He was journalist in our channel, France 2. He was killed here in Syria 3 years ago. You had promised an investigation about that to know who killed him. What can you tell us about this investigation today?
Yeah, regardless of the allegation that time that we killed him, he was in an area under the control, in a residential area under the control of the government. And he was killed by mortar, not by bullet. So the self-evident thing that the government wouldn't shell itself or the residential area of its supporters by mortar. So it's very clear, everybody knows, and many French media at that time acknowledged that he was killed by mortar that was shelled by the, what do you call it, opposition. Actually, they are terrorists. So he definitely killed by them. But if you want to talk about, are you asking about the investigations?
Yes. There have been investigation? Would you give the result of this investigation?
Yeah, of
perhaps
course.
the proof to French justice?
No, we don't have to prove. We have legal procedures, and whenever we have any crime in Syria, we have to follow these procedures like any other country. You have judicial system in Syria. You have regular procedures. So if you want to know about these details after this interview, you can be referred to the involved institution or interested institution.
And you would be okay to give this investigation to French justice?
Of course, we don't have any problem.
If French justice would like to send investigators here, policemen, judge, would you be okay to?
That depends on the agreement between the two governments. If you have agreement or let's say a treaty or such a thing regarding the judicial systems in the two countries, in the cooperation between these two systems, we don't have problem. But it's not a political decision.
Thank you, Mr. President.